parshas as well, or just chapters and verse?
Chapter and verse. So the parshas are something that we divided, and so Genesis 8 verse 1 that comes from this from this source, not from us.
When we read in the Chumash, because I'm not about Korah, when we read in a Torah scroll, how do you divide between the Parshiot? Is there a division between the Parshiot?
There are two ways that an area will end. You have something called a patuach, something that's open, and something called a sagur, something that's closed. So sometimes you will have an area where there seems to be space in between, and that will be something that's patuach, that's open. And sometimes you'll end a concept and then you just go directly into the other, and that's called sagur. That's called closed. At the end of each parsha, you'll usually have three ptuchim. You'll have the space of at least 3 letters of open space, with the exception of the parsha of Vayechi, which is telling of what Jacob is going to tell of the hidden, closed, secret future to his children. And because that future is hidden and closed, both from Yaakov himself to tell from his children and from us, we don't know all the secrets of the world to come that he was going to reveal to us. Because that is satum, it's closed, that parsha Vayechi starts with 3 stumim, with 3 closed things. So you'll notice that there's no full letter, there's no 3 space division between that parsha and every other parsha. And we're going to continue. We're on chapter 8, verse 1. We're on page 44 at the top. Vayizkor, and he remembered, with a mahapach. So this is going to gather everything that's come from before, and it's going to focus us forward into what's going to go next. While God had applied punishment for the calamities, he nevertheless preserved his mercy, and he remembered his attitude of kindness for the innocents who had suffered, as indicated by the shape of the reading mark. So we're going to fold what has come from before, the mercy granted to the inhabitants of the ark itself, and we're going to move that forward into Elokim,
which is Midat Hadin.
Which is Midat Hadin, God in his sense of judgment. At the time when God above had made judgment against guilt, he did not fail to add kindness for good results, as denoted by the directional shape of the reading mark. This is a pashta. This is going to be something that's going to emphasize the word and move us forward into what's going to go on. So the judgment is in fact one that is seen as just and, in a long-term sense, merciful, because otherwise, if this judgment had not been made, then the earth would not have been able to sustain itself and would have ended at this point. So having given the judgment to end all of those things that were destructive and non-productive and would not have led to a future that could have continued to exist, passing this judgment and removing all of those things was in fact merciful and allowed that remnant to continue. Et Noach, with a katon. So this is again that 2-part note. It's going to focus us on the word and tell us that there is a higher and a lower, a good and a bad about it. We'll come back to the note on the first word in a minute. First, number 3. Firstly, God shared with Noach the suffering of discomfort due to the prolonged confinement responsibilities in maintaining the order in the ark. And because Noach felt pain for the vast destruction being uprooted from a human society, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark, hence he is mentioned first. So Noach has 2 sources of discomfort. The first thing is he has to maintain all of the animals and all of the food, and by the way his family, in this confined space. And he's also lost everything that was his surrounding before. We have the higher and the lower, those things that are being maintained, those things that have been destroyed. So Noach has this two-part note to mention his two main sources of discomfort. We're going to go back to Vayizkor, which has an extra note, NB, on page 44 near the bottom. The remembrance of God is always connected with positive results by improving a situation. Chesed zacharti lach. Hine zacharti lach chesed ne'orayach avat klootayach, or Vayizkor Elokim et Rachel. So whenever we have the word Vayizkor mentioned in a source in Tanakh, there's something that's good that's going to come after it. This is focused in on us in particular in Zichronot, in one of the Musaf services on Rosh Hashanah. We mention in each of the sections 10 psukim, 10 sentences, and each of the sentences tells of something that God remembers, and then there's always a good outcome afterwards. So whenever God focuses on something that he makes important at the moment, it flows into something that is going to be a giving source for him, a productive source after that. So this memory leads to something good always.
How is that distinguished from pakad? Hashem pakad et Sarah,
So pakad is more of a counting, and we also say v'yom fakti ufakadati lechem mishpat. That there's also the when God finishes counting the end of a particular time, He will also mete out judgment. So it has the idea of completion of an appointed time, and then you might get good or bad after it. But Zecher is always going to focus to good after.
Could that be related in any way to what we were talking about earlier with the Shemitah here? The counting out of the time and then...
So we don't have either of the words pakad or zecher or to remember in that construct. We have visafarta, and you should count, and those are things that are imposed on us to do. So we're going to count, and pakad and vayizkor are going to be what God is going to do. And I'm going to have to look at a concordance to see if God ever counts. I will have to. I have homework. The et, and along with the mahapach. So this is going to fold in everything that's come before and focus it forward. So remember, Noach, because he's got this extra level of suffering, is the one who gets the remembrance first. Similarly, other limitations were specific reactions to the outside conditions, and along with more deficiencies, have been discovered, as stressed by the shape of the reading mark. So we're going to talk about the other inhabitants of the ark who have a little bit of Noah caring for them, but they still have their own sets of difficulties. They are still dealing with their own losses, but they have been at least sheltered by the ark and by Noah. So they're going to be folding in the care that Noah has given them, and they're going to move forward still through their own separation from all the rest of their own kinds from before. Kol hachaya, all the beast, with a pashta. So this is going to slightly emphasize the word and look forward to what's going to come after it. Second to Noach, all the beast was considered because of the lengthy period of grave deprivation of their habits, being part of innate vitality like feeding, mobility, etc., as shown by the directional shape of the reading mark. So their suffering upon the ark is their physical suffering and not the emotional suffering of losing anything else of their own kind. But still, that's going to be their focus. Viet kol habehema, and with all the cattle. This has a katon, this has that two-part note. So these are the domesticated animals. Besides the beast, God also dealt with other animals and with all the cattle, considering their normal requirements, functions, etc., which were abolished in the ark, as suggested by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So before, domestic animals had a function. They gave milk, they gave something that was productive, and seemingly we're saying here that this was not something that was used upon the ark. Because both their normal habits and the good things that they used to give but don't seem to be used here are their considerations, are their loss, are their suffering during the time when they're confined to the ark. Asher, with the mercha, so this is going to focus us forward but not separate itself out from the things that have come before. That. Similarly, God also considered the positions of the rest of the species that were barred from their natural habitat and forced to adopt new habits in the ark, along with a new discipline, as expressed by the directional shape of the reading mark. The animals have to change their nature and their habits because they're ito, with him, with the tipcha, that's going to close off the concept that the mercha has given us. But each species depended on the Creator's decision and left with him the trust, as specified by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So normally we would read Ito as referring to Noach, who was mentioned earlier on in the pasuk, when he's Korolakim at Noach. Remember Noach, and the and the wild beasts and the domesticated animals, Asher Ito, that are with him. Who's with him? With Noach. But here we seem to be saying that Ito, because each species depended on the Creator's decision and left with him the trust, we're referring back. Elohim at Noach. God remembered Noach, and the animals are, in fact, with Hashem, with God, not with Noach's care. So that, again, I think is probably something that's unique, because we've got the word with him standing alone as a paragraph. We have to decide where it refers back to. And we're saying that it ultimately refers back to God's decision to spare them, not to Noach's care of them upon the ark. And the Tipcha is going to close as far back as it can in the sentence. It's going to go to the very first noun, Elohim, not to the second noun, Noach. Bateva, in the box, with the stabilizing et nachta. In addition, there were difficulties due to the laws which were imposed in the box, as illustrated by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. The ark in and of itself created a way of life, created a normal that all the species had to adhere to, and the ark itself creates that stabilizing base. The animals can't eat other animals. The grazers have to wait until Noach gives them food. The burrowing animals can't burrow through the wood of the ark. That would not be good. So again, you create all sorts of new rules that are imposed by the ark itself, and that becomes the normal, the stability that everything has to adhere to. Vaya'aver, with the pashta, and he traversed. So normally vaya'aver means that he made to go over. So he created something that was going to go over. So this
here,
is
as
opposed to and he traversed, right? So again, the translation is not completely grammatical. So we have
he's translating vaya'avor.
He's translating vaya'avor, not vaya'aver. So we have a passive turned into an active. Number 10, God caused a turn of events, and he traversed a change by another heavenly messenger, as conveyed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So again, this is a pashta. This is something that's going to look forward and move us on with some emphasis. That what's going to happen is going to come from this decision of God to make something else happen. Elohim with a mercha. So normally in this grouping we'd have pashta, mapach pashta. Here we have a mercha, which is not going to scoop up everything before and focus it forward. It's going to include the things that are there, but it's going to just gently move them forward and not in such a focused fashion. God above, number 12, our numbering is a little bit off.
Oh, yeah.
We have 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 on page 44, and we have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we're just going to perhaps change the numbers in the text. Number 12 is going to turn into 11. Number 13 is going to turn into 12. 14 is on page 44. So we're just going to change the numbers so that they match the next page. Number 11, God above, his servants had chosen a new delegate and gave him powers to relieve the function of the previous one, as demonstrated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So this is a mercha. This is going to lead forward into what's going to come after it. So what God had decided was going to be the agent of change is going to now go forward. Ruach, a wind, a spirit with a pashta. This is going to focus us forward and emphasize the word, and we'll notice that there are two pashtas on the top of the word ruach, so we expect a double meaning to this. Like water, the sun, various animals, God dispatched a wind as a servant of heaven to move the waters of the flood by mechanical power, as illustrated by the shape of the reading mark. So this is something that's going to move forward, and although he doesn't emphasize it, there is a doubleness here. Let's see, alternate. So we've got a second answer to perhaps this what it might be. By His Spirit, God kept the ark away from violent winds connected with waters of the flood in order to render the box stable and secure, preventing it from changing position from one sea to another, e.g. Ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim, that the wind of God would blow on, so that in the Bereshit story, as depicted by the double directional shape of the reading mark. So we have winds that are violent and destructive, and winds that are protective of the ark and those things that are in it, and winds that are going to diminish the flood waters afterwards. So hence we have that double shape to the pashta, that double pashta there. Al haaretz, over the land, with a katon. And again, this is the two dots on top of the aleph from aretz. So this is again a word that's going to have two features to it. Over the land, number 13. Therefore, the command for the wind was to keep the position of the ark, and it was to remain over the land, as signified by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So the wind is going to both cause destruction elsewhere and cause stability for the ark in the vicinity of the ark. Vayashoku, and they were bitten with the tipcha. So this is going to gather what's come from before. When the downflow of the flood was enhanced by the mighty wind, the level of the waters decreased noticeably, and they were bitten step by step in the direction downwards, as emphasized by the reverse direction of the reading mark. And I'm just going to briefly peek here and see how ArtScroll translates Vayashoku. So he's obviously from deriving it from the root of nashach, to bite. But so ArtScroll translates it as was restrained, was held back. So we have a much more literal and demonstrative term being used here for Vayashoku from to be bitten. So literally, the flood water is going to recede in fits and starts. You're going to get little bits of it that are taken away, little bits of it are taken away, and you have to realize, you're sitting there in the ark, and you can't quite determine any features outside, but step by step you're going to notice that things are different, rather than this smooth, slowly little bits going away. You're going to notice it in fits and jumps as bits of land come available. As you go from day to night and day to night, you're going to notice a difference between each day and each night. Hamayim, the waters, number 15. As a result, with the stabilizing sof pasuk, as a result, the waters of the flood joined those of the sea. So, because we're giving the word hamayim, the waters, a plural definition, because it's saying mayim, plural, what two waters are we talking about? The water of the flood and the water that was originally in the sea before. And these become unified, and therefore we get stability from that. Again, with an interesting twist that we're saying hamayim is in fact a plural. We'll read the pasuk. Vayizkor Elokim et Noach v'yet kol hachaya v'yet kol habehema asher ito bateva vayaver Elokim ruach al haaretz vayashoku hamayim. And just to differentiate, so remember we said Elokim, which normally in that combination of notes would be a mapach. So I want you to listen to the difference between read it with that theoretical mahapach and reading it with the mercha that's there. So again, the mahapach is something that's going to include the things that are before and then focus you forward, and the mercha is just going to gently lead into what's going to go next. So here's the way that it's written: Vayaver Elokim Ruach, and here's the way that it's not written: Vayaver Elokim Ruach. So the other one is going to draw you back a little bit, and then really tightly go forward to the next one. So again, listen again. Here's the way that it's written: Vayaver Elokim Ruach, gentle. Vayaver Elokim Ruach. You finish breathing out, and then you breathe in, and you got to talk, and you move forward. So you've closed off that thought and move forward with more focus. So that's not the way that it's written. It's written with this gentleness,
Right.
that the things that are going to be prepared from here on in, the way that God is doing it, is a gentle flow forward, not a fold in everything that was there and move forward from there with everything having been closed off.
The violence was over.
So I'm confused. You said that's the way, the gentler way
Is the way that it's written, but quite often when you see this combination of notes, it would have that mahapach in there, not the mercha. So just to see again, when you expect something and it's different, you have to think, why is it different? Mm-hmm. It's different because there's no more violence, there's no more roughness. It's gentle, it's planned, it's the way God wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to stop here for the week.
Thank you.